Yeah. Aloha, everybody. How you guys doing out there? This is George. I'm just kind of checking in with everybody, hoping you guys are having a great day. I hope you're finding something to do on lockdown. I know it can be troubling at times and kind of tricky, but it's a good time to spend with your family, and it's a good time to do what you got to do. Get out there, feel good about yourself. If you can get out to the beach, it's always a good spot. See if I can get some people filtering in over here. Yeah, what's up, everybody? So stoked to see you guys. Thank you for taking a minute to hang out with me. I was gonna have a guest today. Unfortunately, my friend had to work, and I kind of want to tell you about him a little bit. I don't think he'll mind. But have you ever reached out to like an old friend and got to hear their story? Well, that's what happened to me. I reached out to an old friend, or we kind of crossed paths, and I was asking him how he was doing, and he told me this phenomenal story about how he actually went into a coma and he died, but then he came back, and it was pretty amazing to me to get to hear a little bit of his story and get to hear a little bit about how he kind of changed and how he sees his life now, and how he's been able to look back on some of the mistakes he's made and kind of forgive himself and move forward as a better person. And then it just led me down this road of different scriptures and theological teachings about how people are reborn, and I was telling him, I almost started crying when I was talking to him, because I was like, man, you actually got the experience of getting to be reborn. Like you died, man, you passed away, and then you came back. And it was really raw. The whole talk was so raw because it was pretty fresh, and there were some crazy things that happened to him, but the overall conversation was so positive, and I hope he wants to come on and share it, because it's a really moving story, and I thought it was amazing. I also wanted to show you guys something that I've been using. You guys ever use CBD oil? Like, I haven't really used it a whole lot. Like, as a guy that's always kind of, man, I'm 45 years old. I'm a truck driver, so my knees are jacked. And when I got hurt, I would always use like this Tiger Balm right here, and it works pretty good. I used it for years, and then when you get older, you kind of get set in your ways or whatever. And I just always used that. And then the other day, there was this gentleman on my route that I was talking to, and I told him I was out of Tiger Balm, and he's like, "Oh, I was rubbing my knee," and he's like, "What's wrong, man?" I'm like, "Oh, my knee's all jacked up," and he's like, "Here, try this," and I'm like, "What is it?" And he gave me this thing right here. So I don't know if you guys use CBD oil. Like I'm new to it, and for the record, like I get $0 from this guy, but I know this guy, and this guy's super awesome. Like him and his wife have 3 kids, and they're one of us. You know what I mean by that? Like they work out of their house, and they're amazing. But let me show you. Sometimes you get a product and you're like, I don't know what this if it's any good, but very rarely do you get a product that's like it looks like this, and it's like all design, like it looks like you would find it in a spa or something. And I know what you're thinking. At least what I was thinking is like, you know what? I get so many things in like a package that look good, but they're not good. But I gotta tell you, this guy gave me this product and I used it, and I switched from using the Tiger Balm on my knee to using this particular CBD oil. I'll put a link in the description down. You guys can check it out. But dude, it's all organic, it's all homegrown, and the guy's one of us. Him and his wife make it at their house. So if you get a chance and you're looking for CBD oil, you should check out this Hawaiian Choice. So what I was going to get into today, like I see so many people on lockdown, and I see a lot of different channels and a lot of different people speaking about, you know, some kind of conspiracies a little bit, or talking about user agreements and Google and Bill Gates and stuff. And so I thought it would be awesome to see, ta-da, like which world do you think we're living in? Are we living in Brave New World, the thriller by Aldous Huxley, 1931, or are we living in 1984 by Mr. George Orwell? What do you guys think? you guys think that we're living in which one of those? Now, I'm sure it's been a while since a lot of you have read them. I recently reread them so that I could do this stream for you guys and kind of give you my take. And listen, man, the guy's name is George. You know what I mean? So I gotta love George Orwell, you know? However, rereading this book, Brave New World, by Aldous Huxley, it made me think a lot of things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about each book, and I'm going to talk about their strong points, and then I'm going to give you my hot take on what I think is happening as far as which one we're closer to living into. So let's start with the classic 1984 by Orwell. So in this book, am I getting it? Sorry about that. The camera's kind of off. So in this book right here, in this book, I think that what we see, 1984 was written in 1948. He just kind of switched the words around, or switched the numbers around. And what you see in that particular book is what the world would look like if the socialist Marxist movement took over. That's 1984 is a roadmap to a dystopian future ruled by Marxists or socialists. Ultimately, it's the corruption at the top that leads the, you know, the idea of equal distribution down to a problem. It's always the corruption at top. One similar point I see in 1984 that I do see in today's world is the compression of speech. Do you guys remember they had like Newspeak, and they compressed the speech. They did away with synonyms and antonyms and all the different words, and you know, instead of having good and excellent and phenomenal, they just had good plus good, double plus good, or ungood. You know, so they've limited the amount of speech people can have, and by doing so they limited people's thoughts, right? We've talked about this in some other videos where if you don't have the ability to have a robust vocabulary, then you also are limiting the way you can think. Without a linguistic pathway, you can't get anywhere. Additionally, I think that 1984 had a lot of anti-relationship characteristics, where he finally met the young woman and she was in like the junior anti-sex league, and you could see a real attempt to suppress the human condition of flirtation and trying to stop the human emotional part of us from moving forward. Now, Brave New World, on the other hand, this particular book was more about the using chemicals to change the way you think instead of solving problems. In Brave New World, right? Remember, they had what they called soma. And everybody, when you got mad or you got a little crazy, you would take some soma, and that would kind of heal you and make you feel better. And you could argue today that soma is synonymous with selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, right? How many people are on SSRIs? How many people are taking something to try to get them through the day? What Mick Jagger would call mother's little helper. You know, there's a lot of it there. Another point in Brave New World that I thought was rather fascinating was the genetic engineering aspect of it. If you remember, in the beginning of the book, they toured a factory where they would take the children and they would be conditioning them at a young age to be alphas and betas and epsilons and deltas, and each particular class that they were breeding had a specific job they would do. Ultimately, they were training the large swath of human beings, or they were conditioning human beings to be consumers. And you could argue that while we don't have children in incubators shaking them or giving them a shock or trying to condition them to different responses or different stimuluses, you could argue that the phone I'm talking on or the phone that you're watching this through is in fact that same sort of shock, right? We know that when you check your mail or you hear your phone make whatever sound it makes, that it's going to give you like a little shot of dopamine. And you could argue that that is the same effect as having, being shocked, as in Brave New World here. So when it comes down to both of these books, I think that there's a kind of a mix. We're seeing potentially a dictator's fantasy of being able to incorporate 1984 and Brave New World. This particular book right here, not a whole lot of people know, but there was a second book, and it was Brave New World and then Brave New World Revisited. So he actually wrote a second book to follow up on what he talked about in the first book. And there's some interesting parts in there. I just kind of wanted to read a little bit about what Aldous Huxley thought about his own work. And he gets into a little bit of eugenics right here. I just want to read a quick little paragraph so that you can understand what exactly he was trying to accomplish and what the thought at the time about eugenics was. Because part of me thinks what you see with COVID right now is kind of a eugenics process. So let me just read what Aldous Huxley wrote about eugenics in the 30s. Here we go. In the brave new world of my fantasy, eugenics and dysgenics were practiced systematically. In one set of bottles, biologically superior ova fertilized by biologically superior sperm were given the best possible prenatal treatments and were finally decanted as betas, alphas, and even alpha pluses. In another much more numerous set of bottles, biologically inferior ova fertilized by biologically inferior sperm were subjected to the Bakanovsky process and treated prenatally with alcohol and other protein poisons. The creatures finally decanted were almost subhuman, but they were capable of performing unskilled work, and when properly conditioned, detention by free and frequent access to the opposite sex, constantly distracted by gratuitous entertainment, and reinforced in their good behavior patterns by daily doses of soma, would be counted on to give no trouble to their superiors. Let me just read that again, because you could totally make the case that that's what's happening now. The creatures finally decanted were almost subhuman, but they were capable of performing unskilled work, and when properly conditioned by free and frequent access to the opposite sex, constantly distracted by gratuitous entertainment, and reinforced in their good behavior patterns by daily doses of soma. That's one thing people talk about when they talk about Brave New World, is that part of the culture was for each person to give themselves to each other. There was no marriage. There was no real love. There was only lust. And while that's not exactly what we have today, the access to like pornography, you could argue, is the same thing. He continues, in this second half of the 20th century, we do nothing systematic about our breeding. But in our random and unregulated way, we are not only overpopulating the planet, we are also, it would seem, making sure that these greater numbers shall be of biologically poorer quality. In the bad old days, children were considerable, or even with slight hereditary defects rarely survived. Today, thanks to sanitation, modern pharmacology, and the social conscience, most of the children born with hereditary defects reach maturity and multiply their kind. Under the conditions now prevailing, every advance in medicine will tend to be offset by a corresponding advance in the survival rate of individuals cursed by some genetic insufficiency. In spite of new wonder drugs and better treatment, the physical health of the general population will show no improvement and may even deteriorate. And along with the decline of average healthiness, there may well go a decline in average intelligence. Indeed, some competent authorities are convinced that such a decline has already taken place and is continuing. What is this guy talking about? What do you guys think? Under conditions that are both soft and unregulated, writes Dr. Sheldon, our best stock tends to be outbred by stock that is inferior to it in every respect. It is the fashion in some academic circles to assume students that the alarm over differential birth rates is unfounded, that these problems are merely economic, or merely educational, or merely religious, or merely cultural, or something of that sort. This is Pollyanna optimism. Reproductive delinquency is biological and basic, and he adds that nobody knows just how far the average IQ in this country, the USA, has declined since 1916, when Terman attempted to standardize the meaning of IQ 100. Do you guys think that the average IQ of people has radically dropped since 1916? An interesting idea you can do. I just recently got, my mom had sent me some letters from my great grandma, and it's pretty interesting to read the writing. Like, first off, the handwriting is impeccable. The vocabulary seems to be at a higher level. I'm not saying they're smarter, but I'm saying that at a cursory glance, if you wanted to make the argument, I think that there would be plenty of evidence to support that. We could argue what those factors are. We could argue that it's socioeconomic. We could argue that it is a lack of resources for people that cause IQ to drop. However, I don't. There's no debate on it. There's no debate on it, and I think it could be worthwhile. While all these sports are in stadiums and everything's out, right? Like, no one's doing stuff. What we could have right now is we could have like imagine a large scale debate. Isn't that something that people would watch? Like, people could relearn how to use rhetoric. People could relearn the flowers of rhetoric and how to have discussions. And we as a country could use our language to embrace the qualities of life that are important. I think that is something we could do today, that we should be scheduling debates. And instead of having this culture of, what do you call it when everyone just sits around and watches stuff and they don't participate? It's like everyone is it's right on the tip of my tongue, like a spectator. We have all these spectator sports. However, people aren't engaging in the actual sport. We have our debate is 140 characters on Twitter. You can't even get out a comment without it sounding like some sort of ad hominem attack or some sort of logical fallacy. You can't support any evidence on Twitter. I think that we should somehow try to come together to sponsor large-scale debates about what's important and what's not important and what the future of education can be. That's something I was very lucky to get to talk to the headmaster at my daughter's school, and we talked a little bit about how this crisis is providing opportunity. It may not seem like it, but the opportunity is there for people if they want to check it out. One of the opportunities I see there is a chance for the next generation to build the next generation currency. And by that, I mean blockchain technology. I think schools should be, everyone. I think one thing that's lacking in education is an education in finance. I know that I went to a public school and I had a lot of good teachers. However, no one ever sat back and talked about what is money. Is it a store of value? How do you use money? How do you responsibly use money? What's the purpose of money? What is it? And I think that that's something that could be added to the curriculum of all classes. And that could be a debate that the kids could have. And that would give them the foundation to build, a school currency. Each school could have its own cryptocurrency, just as a project where they could truly understand what money is. And I think I'm kind of getting out in the woods as far as, we were talking about how the crisis could add how this crisis could in fact be opportunity. So I think the currency was one. I also think that debate should be another one. I think that kids need competition, not so they learn how to be bad winners, but they learn how to be gracious losers. You know what I mean by that? And loser is probably not the right word. However, it's important to understand winning and losing in life because it's going to happen to you. We could redefine those terms as, hey, maybe there's no losing, there's only gaining experience. But I think that we could get the kids interested in language and debate, since there's no soccer or football or gymnastics or wrestling or anything like that. So let me get back to the battle of the books here. So I think I said previously that 1984 is kind of like the ending of the socialist utopia, and that Brave New World, in my opinion, is the ending of what a fascist utopia looks like. You know, and I'm kind of leaning towards the time we're living in is more Brave New World because of the pharmaceutical products we have that help us feel better about ourselves, because of the pharmaceutical products we have to help us get up and go to work in the morning or leave our family, or, you know, blind our eyes to the tragedy that our families are going through right now. You know, it also seems to be, we need those drugs in order to live in a sick society, right? In a society that is sick, the people that are most adapted are the sickest. And when I think about that, like, how is it that in a large part of our country, we send our wisest people, our parents and our grandparents, we send them to a home. And then we as parents, we go to work in another place while we drop our kids off with strangers. It's like we've decided to give up raising the family to a bunch of strangers. And how is a teacher that has 32 kids in her class supposed to give your child any sort of education? You know, I know so many awesome teachers, and they're so stretched, and a lot of teachers are even buying rulers or buying pens, or they're even buying the paper so that the kids in their class can have that. You know, it's a real discussion we need to have. And as morbid as some of the things are in Brave New World or 1984, you know, I think that there's discussions that need to be had. You know, if we want to move our education system forward, if we want to move our country forward, then we got to make some tough decisions. You know, we have to understand that the people that gravitate towards leadership are the people that gravitate towards power. And the people that gravitate towards power are usually on the narcissistic side. We should talk a little bit about the illusion of choice. Right? How many of you chose Trump, or how many of you chose Biden? Like, if you could choose any of the candidates, would any of you have chose those two? Like, how is it that we only have those two people to choose from? Right? It's because we have the illusion of choice. We don't really have choice. We have the illusion of choice. Right? There's two candidates. There's two political parties. There's like 3 insurance companies, 4 banks. But if you want a bagel, there's 27 different flavors. So you're allowed to make choices as long as those choices don't interfere with the profits of the owners of the country. And we're moving quickly, rapidly down that track. So something to think about. Another point that they make in the book, both books, I believe, talk a lot about social conditioning. And I think that one thing we're being conditioned to right now is that we all have this strange commodity fetish. You know what I mean by that? Like, we're spending money we don't have on things we don't need. And the reason we do that is because we're bombarded with this advertisement. We're bombarded with these linguistic constructs that paint a picture of paradise in front of us. And if you just buy this car, then you can have this beautiful woman and a puppy, or if you buy this dress, then you will go out into town with your girlfriends and you'll have this champagne and you'll live in this mansion. But none of that's true. None of it's true. And I'm unsure as to what the crisis is doing as far as making the commodity fetish better or making it worse. I think that I've seen a lot of good things. And some of the good things are that the kids are home with the parents. The parents are teaching the kid what's important, and they're giving the kid lessons, and it's kind of a throwback to the 50s or even earlier when at least one parent was there to be with the kid, and you could pass on the family values to your child, whatever your family values are, and you're not farming that out to somebody else. There is a lot of people that have spare time that are on the internet buying stuff. And that might be because the stores are closed or they don't have access to go and get stuff. However, I know from my point of view, like I'm really working hard on trying to not buy stuff from Amazon. I'm trying to, when I sit down and I'm bored or if I'm looking for something, I try to, and I'm going to buy something. Like I'm going to buy a new pair of like swim goggles. And then I got to tell myself, do I really need these? I already have like 2 pair. Yeah, but one of them is scratched. Yeah, but do you really need that right now? Think about the people out there working. You think that guy wants to deliver that stuff to you? Probably not. And so if you can, try to think about, do you have a commodity fetish? I do. I'm like embarrassed to tell everybody that. Like I buy all kinds of stuff. It's a problem. But if you're conscious about it, you can work on it and you can get better at it. And I hope you guys take that to heart, because I think that's something that plagues us all. So those were my kind of opening remarks on the 2 books as far as Brave New World versus 1984. And I'm just curious if you guys have any thoughts about what you think about those 2 books, and do you have any thoughts on the authors, or do you think we're living in one versus the other, or which way do you see us heading there? Do you see us heading down one path, or do you see us heading down another path, or can you guys see the double speak that's happening, or the compression of language? That's what I got on those 2 books today. And I should have another guest for you guys coming up next week. And if you get a chance, that I'll put a link to the CBD oil that I was using. It's really good. And like I said, I don't make any money from it, but it's a good product. And the family's an awesome guy. And if you get a chance, check it out. I really like it. So that's pretty much what I got for today. Just want to tell you guys I love you. Aloha. Hope you're all doing well. All right.